The United States spans nearly 10 million square kilometers, covering all 50 states, Washington, D.C., and 5 overseas territories. The diversity of ecosystems and species that inhabit them is incredible, and in some cases, highly localized. Endemism is when a species or organism is native and restricted to a single defined geographic area. In this video, we're looking at every state and territory in the country and highlighting one endemic species from each. If you're watching from the US, let me know where you're from, and stay tuned to see if your state has any endemic species. Let's begin in the Northeast. In the Northeast, the states tend to be small and the ecosystems are more homogeneous. As a result, I couldn't find any endemic species for 6 of them: Rhode Island, Connecticut, Vermont, Maine, New York, and New Jersey. Only 2 states in this region have at least one known endemic species. At first, I couldn't find any for Massachusetts either, but I eventually came across a peculiar deep-sea octopus that has only ever been recorded off its coast, Grimpoteothis megaterra. In 1885, 5 specimens of an unknown Dumbo octopus were dredged up from the deep sea near Martha's Vineyard. While some of those specimens are now thought to belong to a different species, at least 2 are still recognized as legitimate. But no other specimen of this octopus species has been recorded in the last 140 years. New Hampshire has a tiny perennial plant called the dwarf mountain cinquefoil. This alpine species grows only in the White Mountains, clinging to the harsh, wind-scoured slopes near Mount Monroe in the Presidential Range. It survives in a rare environment called a fell field, where the ground is constantly disturbed by frost heave, and it's one of the few plants that's able to take root here. It was once nearly wiped out by trampling from hikers along the Appalachian Trail, and it eventually became one of the first plants protected under the U.S. Endangered Species Act. Thanks to decades of careful management, trail rerouting, and replanting efforts, it has recovered and was officially removed from the endangered list in 2002. Today, it survives in just 4 known populations. Moving down to the mid-Atlantic, we have the nation's capital and 5 more states. Washington, D.C. is incredibly small, and as a result has no endemic species. The same is true of Delaware, and surprisingly, I couldn't find any example of an endemic species to the state of Pennsylvania, despite its larger size. But Maryland, Virginia, and West Virginia each have at least one endemic species. In Maryland, you can find the aptly named Maryland darter. It's one of the rarest freshwater fish in North America, and the only vertebrate species found exclusively within the state. Discovered in 1912 in Deer Creek, it has never been confirmed from anywhere else. This small fish reaches about 6 centimeters in length, favoring clear, fast-flowing streams with rocky bottoms and abundant aquatic vegetation. They're distinguished by a striking pattern of dark, maze-like markings across their pale bodies. Sadly, sedimentation, pollution, and damming degraded its already limited habitat, and by the 1980s, sightings had become incredibly rare. The last confirmed observation occurred in 1988, and today the species is considered lost, and it may already be extinct. Down in Virginia, the Shenandoah salamander is found only within the boundaries of Shenandoah National Park. It lives high in the Blue Ridge Mountains, restricted to just 3 north-facing talus slopes on Hawksbill, Stony Man, and the Pinnacles. Adapted to cool, moist microhabitats beneath stones and leaf litter, the species faces constant competition from the far more common red-backed salamander, which dominates lower elevations. Because the Shenandoah salamander is confined to such a narrow band of habitat, it's highly sensitive to climate change and disturbance. It was listed as federally endangered in 1989, but for now, the population appears to be stable. Meanwhile, West Virginia is home to the flat-spired three-toothed snail. This very rare land snail is found only in a small section of the northern Appalachian Mountains, primarily along the Cheat River Gorge in Randolph and Tucker counties. The snail shell is distinctive, being flattened and disc-like with 3 small teeth inside the opening, which give it its common name. Because it needs a stable, humid microclimate and calcium-rich soils, it's highly sensitive to logging, quarrying, and habitat disturbances. It was once considered endangered due to its extremely limited range, but careful habitat management and protection of the Cheat Canyon have helped secure its future. Moving into the southeast, we find that every single state has at least one endemic species, though I did have to cheat a little with North Carolina. The red wolf once ranged across much of the eastern and southern United States, but today the only surviving wild population is found in North Carolina, on the Albemarle-Pamlico Peninsula. While not a true endemic, the wild population is restricted around the Alligator River and Pocossin Lakes National Wildlife Refuges, along with some nearby private lands. After being declared extinct in the wild in 1980, red wolves were reintroduced here in 1987, and the area remains managed as a non-essential experimental population under the Endangered Species Act. Only a few dozen adults live freely today, and the wolves continue to face threats from vehicle strikes and gunshot mortalities. Continued success depends on stronger local cooperation, new release strategies, and sustained state support, along with careful monitoring of the pups that are being born in the wild. In South Carolina, the only endemic species that I could find is a marine snail known as the Charleston slitshell. It's a large, deep-water species first described from specimens dredged 80 to 90 miles east of Charleston, and it's long been considered one of the rarest shells in the western Atlantic. Although it is officially known only from South Carolina, some shell collectors have reported finding shells of this species farther south into the Caribbean and Central America, suggesting that it may not be endemic to South Carolina or even the United States. Georgia's Etowah River system is home to the Etowah darter, a small fish that lives in clear, fast-flowing riffles over gravel, cobble, and small boulders. The species was listed as federally endangered in 1994 due to its extremely limited range, habitat fragmentation from impoundments, and chronic sedimentation that smothers its spawning habitat. Males develop a blue-green wash on their breasts during breeding, and the species can hybridize where it overlaps with the green-breast darter, which complicates conservation in parts of its range. Protecting clean, fast-moving riffles and reducing runoff remain key to its recovery. Florida has remarkably high rates of endemism, with over 200 endemic plant species and more than 1,000 endemic invertebrates. But I chose to highlight the state's only endemic bird, one of the few endemic birds to the lower 48. The Florida scrub jay lives in the state's ancient inland scrublands, dominated by sand pines, oaks, and palmettos. Unlike most jays, it doesn't move around very much, with family groups occupying the same territory year-round, and the offspring often staying to help raise the next brood. Its intelligence and social structure are remarkable. Cooperative breeding, sentinel behavior, and food caching all play key roles in their survival. The bird's vivid blue and gray plumage and loud rasping calls are a familiar presence in dry, sandy habitats like the Ocala National Forest and the Lake Wales Ridge, where it depends on periodic fires to keep the scrub open and low. Alabama is home to the Red Hills salamander. This large, lungless species is found only in a narrow band of steep ravines in the Red Hills of south-central Alabama. It lives on shaded, north-facing slopes, where it digs permanent burrows and spends most of its life underground, emerging only on humid nights to forage. Clear-cutting of mature forest, road building, and erosion have degraded much of its habitat, leading to it being listed as federally endangered. Because of its slow life cycle, low reproductive rate, and long lifespan, recovery depends on protecting intact ravine forests and improving forestry practices on surrounding lands. The yellow-blotched map turtle is a river turtle found only in Mississippi's Pascagoula River system. The species prefers to live in swift channels with plenty of snags for basking and open sandbars for nesting. Females grow much larger than males, while both sexes display the species' namesake yellow blotches on their dark carapaces. These turtles are most often seen around Hattiesburg and in the Pascagoula River State Wildlife Management Area to the south. Louisiana is home to the Abbeville red iris. This striking red-flowered species is found only in a single swamp complex near the town of Abbeville in Vermilion Parish, where it grows in the standing water of seasonally flooded Cypress Tupelo wetlands. They form dense stands of sword-like leaves and tall scarlet blooms that appear in spring. Its brilliant red flowers attract hummingbirds, which serve as its main pollinators, and its extremely limited range has made it a point of local pride and conservation attention. Moving north into Arkansas, the southern grotto salamander is a pale, cave-dwelling amphibian found only in the Ozark Plateau. It spends much of its life underground, inhabiting springs, sinkholes, and cave streams that stay cool and humid year-round. Adults are fully adapted to the dark, with reduced pigmentation, small eyes, and a slender, almost translucent body. Interestingly, this species begins life as a surface-dwelling larva before moving permanently into subterranean habitats as an adult. In Tennessee lives the Barren's darter. This small, vividly patterned fish is found only in a few tributaries of the upper Caney Fork River in the central part of the state, where it inhabits quiet pools in headwater streams and creeks. Males develop bright orange fins and blue-green highlights during the breeding season, making them among the most colorful darters in the region. The species feeds mainly on small aquatic insects, and it depends on steady, well-oxygenated water flow. Its limited range and specialized habitat make it an important indicator of stream health. The Kentucky clover is known from only a few sites in the bluegrass region of Kentucky. It grows in open glades and prairies, habitats that were once widespread across the state but have become increasingly fragmented by human development. It blooms in late spring with pale pink to white flower heads that attract native bees and other pollinators. The plant is easily mistaken for the more common buffalo clover, but can be recognized by its larger flowers and distinct leaf shape. Because of this resemblance, the Kentucky clover was long overlooked and wasn't formally described until 1992. In the Midwest, I didn't expect to find an endemic species for most of these states, but amazingly, I managed to find one for every state except one, Iowa. So, if you're watching from Iowa, I'm sorry to let you down. Also, for Ohio, I had to cheat a little. In 1943, ichthyologists described a new species of madtom found in a short stretch of Big Darby Creek near Columbus. The Scioto madtom was only a few centimeters long and spent its days hiding on the streambed, emerging at night to feed on aquatic insects. When scientists searched for it in other areas, they couldn't find it anywhere else. Then, in 1957, the last Scioto madtom was recorded, and despite extensive surveys since, it has never been seen again. Only 18 specimens remain in existence, and this rare Ohio endemic was officially declared extinct in 2023. Indiana is home to several species of Sudanophthalmus beetles, all adapted to life in caves. Each species tends to be confined to a single cave or cave system, and one of the best examples is Young's cave beetle. Found only in a single limestone cave in Monroe County in the state's southwestern karst region, it's pale, slender, and completely blind, relying on long antennae and fine sensory hairs to navigate in total darkness. The genus represents one of the most diverse radiations of cave beetles in North America, and in Indiana, some of the only true endemic species belong to this group of beetles. Michigan is home to a bright yellow wetland plant that's so tied to the state it carries the common name Michigan monkeyflower and the scientific name Erythranthe michiganensis. It's restricted to the Mackinac Straits and Grand Traverse regions, with occurrences concentrated in a 6-county area. It grows in calcareous seeps, which are non-acidic wetlands that are fed by calcium-rich groundwater that keeps the soil saturated but not stagnant. The plant produces showy, snapdragon-like blooms through summer, and reproduces mainly by cloning via creeping stems rather than by seed, a breeding strategy that has limited its ability to colonize new habitats. Wisconsin was another difficult state to find an endemic species for, but it turns out that in a single artesian well northeast of the state capital, Madison, lives a tiny subterranean crustacean known as the Wisconsin well amphipod. It lacks pigment, has no eyes, and spends its entire life underground. Very little is known about its biology or its range. It was initially collected in the early 20th century, but went undocumented for nearly 70 years before a few specimens were rediscovered during an amphipod survey in 1994. These specimens were pulled up from an unfiltered well in Fond du Lac County. In just a few valleys along the Cannon River watershed lives the Minnesota dwarf trout lily, a delicate spring wildflower endemic to southern Minnesota. It grows on shaded, north-facing slopes in deciduous forests, often blooming just as the last snow melts. It's much smaller than its close relative, the white trout lily. It produces pale pink, nodding flowers, and it spreads mostly through runners rather than seed. It's one of the rarest plants in the United States and the only flowering plant known to exist exclusively within Minnesota's borders. The Niangua darter is a small fish found only in the Niangua River system of central Missouri. Males can be brilliantly colored, displaying vivid orange and turquoise bands during the breeding season. The species spends most of its life near the bottom, feeding on insect larvae, and it's restricted to the Ozark Plateau, where clean, cool, spring-fed streams provide the habitat that it depends on. The Little Wabash crayfish is endemic to Illinois, confined to the Little Wabash River system in the southeastern part of the state. It lives in sandy, well-oxygenated streams that flow through farmland, and instead of hiding in deep burrows, it clings to gravel and woody debris in the current. It's often seen scuttling quickly across the stream bed, and its reddish-brown shell and sharply sculpted claws make it easy to tell apart from other crayfish that share its range. Of the 5 states sitting in the Great Plains region in the center of the country, 3 have no endemic species that I could find: Nebraska and both North and South Dakota. Meanwhile, just like Illinois, Oklahoma is home to an endemic crayfish, and this one is even stranger. The Oklahoma cave crayfish is pale and eyeless, being found only in a few limestone caves in the Arbuckle Mountains in the south-central part of the state. It's perfectly adapted to perpetual darkness, having long, delicate antennae and limbs that help it navigate underground streams where light never reaches. It relies on a slow, steady flow of groundwater to sustain the isolated cave systems it inhabits. Sadly, these fragile habitats are in serious danger, and the species is at imminent risk of going extinct, being classified as critically endangered by the IUCN. In the Smoky Hills of central Kansas lives a low, silvery green plant known as spreading buckwheat. Found mainly in Ellsworth, Lincoln, Russell, and Barton counties, it grows on dry limestone and gypsum outcrops, where it forms compact mats that hug the rocky soil. This species is well adapted to the intense sun and thin, mineral-rich soils of the region, and it's one of the few plants that's able to thrive in Kansas's exposed uplands. Moving west towards the Rockies, there was only one more state that I couldn't find any endemic species for, and that's Montana. Every other state had at least one. In Wyoming, it's a species that I've covered once on the channel before because of its rarity, the Wyoming toad. It's found only in the Laramie Basin of southeastern Wyoming, and despite the fact that it was once common around the margins of lakes and ponds in the region's short grass prairie, it declined sharply in the late 20th century, eventually being declared extinct in the wild in 1991. Thankfully, intensive captive breeding and reintroduction efforts are now helping the species to make a comeback, and today it's one of North America's most closely managed amphibians. It was also difficult to find an endemic species from Colorado, but I came across one that was described only last year. Larca bulderica is a tiny cave-dwelling pseudoscorpion known only from Mallory Caves in the Flatirons near Boulder, Colorado. It occupies dry, dusty microhabitats inside the cave, where they capture small invertebrates with their pedipalps. The species has pale coloring, slightly elongated appendages, and adults are only about the size of a sesame seed. Its discovery marks the 6th cave-adapted member of the genus Larca recognized in North America. To the west of Colorado, Utah is the only place that you can find Maguire's daisy. It's found only in the sandstone canyonlands in the central part of the state. It tucks into cracks and pockets of sandstone, and the dense hair on its stems often collects wind-blown sand. Its flower heads are about the size of a dime, blooming in late spring when the desert finally gets a bit of moisture. Once thought to be extremely rare, extensive surveys revealed that the daisies were surviving in many more sites than previously thought, and the species was removed from the U.S. endangered list in 2011 after meeting its recovery goals. Up in Idaho, the Wood River sculpin is found only in the Wood River Basin, including the Big Wood, Little Wood, and their spring-fed tributaries in the upper Snake River system. It lives in cool, fast-moving riffles, using its broad pectoral fins to brace against the current while snapping up aquatic insects as they drift by. Adults grow to between 6 and 10 centimeters long and spawn in spring when the water warms, with males guarding the eggs tucked beneath flat rocks. Its entire range is confined to just a few connected watersheds, but it remains locally common in protected habitats. The American Southwest is one of the most biologically diverse parts of the United States, with each state having multiple endemic species. One of Texas's most interesting endemics is the Texas blind salamander. It's only ever been found in 7 localities, and it's restricted to the San Marcos area of Hays County, where it lives in underground streams and artesian wells. They have slender, white bodies, feathery external gills, and tiny, skin-covered eyes that sense light, but not shapes. It never develops past the larval stage, remaining aquatic and gilled throughout its life. As the groundwater they rely on has become more and more polluted and overconsumed, their population has decreased significantly, and they're currently listed as critically endangered. The Sacramento Mountains salamander is a small lungless species restricted to cool, moist forests in the Sacramento, Sierra Blanca, and Capitan Mountains in south-central New Mexico, mostly within Lincoln National Forest. They live under rocks, rotten logs, and in rock crevices at higher elevations, only emerging on wet nights to forage. They have squared toe tips, which give them extra grip for climbing. And unlike most salamanders, they lay small clutches of eggs in rotting wood rather than in water. The young develop entirely within the egg, hatching as miniature adults. In the White Mountains of Arizona lives a small and beautiful species of fish found here and nowhere else, the Apache trout. They inhabit cold, clear mountain streams. It was once widespread across the upper Salt River watershed, but now it survives mainly in headwater creeks on the Fort Apache and San Carlos reservations, and a few restored streams in nearby national forests. Its distinctive yellow sides, black spots, and bold eye stripe make it one of the most striking trout in North America. In the 1960s, they nearly went extinct due to overfishing and hybridization, but now they're a protected species, with ongoing conservation efforts being made. They remain listed as critically endangered by the IUCN. Nevada is also home to an endemic fish. The white river spine dace is a slender, silvery species found only in a short stretch of the upper White River system in eastern Nevada. While their coloration is generally monochromatic, during the breeding season, males develop a rosy flush along the sides and a faint bluish sheen on their fins. Its entire range covers just a few kilometers of interconnected spring streams, making it one of Nevada's most geographically restricted fish. The U.S. has 5 states that have coastlines on the Pacific. California has extremely high rates of endemism, with over 11,000 endemic species, over 9,000 of which are insects. But I chose one of the state's few endemic vertebrates, and one of only 4 mammals, to make it into this video. The island fox lives only on 6 of California's Channel Islands, off the southern coast of the state. Each island population is slightly different, forming its own subspecies. They're about the size of a house cat, and they feed on fruit, insects, and small animals. On the islands, they're often seen trotting confidently across open scrub or along the beaches. After a dramatic population crash in the 1990s, caused by disease and predation from golden eagles, intensive recovery efforts brought all 6 subspecies back from the brink, making the island fox one of the fastest recoveries ever recorded under the Endangered Species Act. To the north in Oregon, Applegate's milkfetch is a rare legume found only in the Klamath Basin in the southern part of the state. It grows in seasonally moist meadows where the snowmelt each spring briefly saturates the soil before drying in summer. The plant forms low mats of silky leaves and produces clusters of pale pink to cream flowers that attract native pollinators. Thought to be extinct for much of the 20th century, it was rediscovered in the 1980s near Klamath Falls. Washington state also has its own endemic mammal, the Olympic marmot. This large burrowing rodent is found only in the alpine meadows of the Olympic Mountains, where it lives in colonies across high grassy slopes and talus fields. It spends the summer feeding on wildflowers and grasses, but can spend as much as 8 months of the year hibernating. Recognizable by its thick fur and sharp whistling calls, it's sometimes called the whistle pig of the Olympics. Up to the northwest of Canada, we have the final mammal on this list. The massive state of Alaska has several endemic vertebrates, but the Glacier Bay water shrew is one of the most interesting. In the coastal forests that stretch southward along the Pacific coast sits Glacier Bay, the home of this semi-aquatic shrew. It inhabits cold streams and mossy banks where it dives and swims in pursuit of aquatic insects and small crustaceans, its dense fur trapping air that keeps it buoyant and insulated in the frigid water. It's hardly been studied, and little is known about its behavior or its population size. And jumping out across the Pacific, we come to the 50th member of the United States, Hawaii. 90% of the archipelago's native terrestrial species are endemic, and as much as 30% of the marine species. But Hawaii is really known for the diverse bird life that once filled the islands, 2/3 of which have gone extinct in the last 500 years. Of the surviving species, the iiwi is one of Hawaii's most recognizable, famous for its brilliant scarlet plumage and long curved orange bill. It was once widespread across the islands, but now survives mainly in high elevation forests on Maui and Hawaii, where cooler temperatures limit the population of mosquitoes that carry avian malaria. The United States also has 5 overseas territories that aren't states. Puerto Rico became an unincorporated territory of the United States in 1899, and it's the only home of the Puerto Rican Amazon. After being colonized by the Spanish, the species declined drastically due to deforestation and capture for the pet trade. By the 1970s, only 13 birds remained in the wild, sparking intensive conservation efforts. Today, wild populations have been re-established in El Yunque National Forest and Rio Abajo State Forest, with additional releases on Mona Island. Known locally as the cotorra puertorriqueña, it's the only extant parrot species left in Puerto Rico. Just to the east are the U.S. Virgin Islands, where you can find St. Croix's anole. This slender, bright green lizard is found only on the island of St. Croix, where it lives in dry forests, gardens, and coastal scrub. Males display a vivid orange dewlap to defend territories and attract mates. Its adaptability to both natural and human-altered habitats has helped it remain common across the island, making it one of St. Croix's most familiar native reptiles. The United States also has 3 territories in the South Pacific. In American Samoa lives Ostodes strigatus, a brightly colored land snail found in the island's rainforests. Its glossy shell, often streaked with brown and yellow bands, helps it blend in among wet foliage. Like many Pacific Island snails, it doesn't feed directly on leaves, but instead grazes on the biofilm and fungi that coat plant surfaces. It was once widespread across several islands, but is now found mainly in the highlands of Tutuila, where remnant native forest still provides the humid conditions it needs to survive. The golden white-eye is a striking yellow songbird found only in the northern Mariana Islands. It once thrived across the archipelago, but now survives only on Saipan and Aguiguin. Stockier than other white-eye species, it has rich golden plumage and a loud, melodious call. It's a highly social bird that forages in pairs or small groups, feeding on insects and fruit while helping disperse seeds of native plants. The golden white-eye faces severe threats from the invasive brown tree snake, which has already wiped out many of the region's native birds on nearby Guam. If the snake were to reach the northern Mariana Islands, this species would likely vanish quickly, so captive breeding populations are being established as a safeguard. Speaking of Guam, it's the only place in the world where you can encounter the Guam kingfisher. It once lived throughout the island's woodlands, but the species was wiped out in the wild by the invasive brown tree snake. While many other endemic species and subspecies went extinct, like the Guam flycatcher, the Guam reed warbler, and the Guam bridled white-eye, the Guam kingfisher was thankfully spared from this fate. A small captive population was established before its extinction in the wild, and it now serves as the foundation for recovery efforts, with plans underway to reintroduce the species to nearby snake-free islands in the Marianas. And that's it for this week's video. What endemic species do you know of from your state, province, or country? Let me know in the comments below. I need to say a special thanks to my patrons. Without their ongoing support, I wouldn't be able to make a video like this every week. If you want to support the channel, consider joining us on Patreon. The link is in the video description below. Or consider becoming a member here on YouTube by hitting the join button below the video. Members get access to exclusive perks like early video releases, special badges, and custom emojis to use in comments. Your support helps me to keep making the best content that I can. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.